Hey guys, this is Gaijin Hunter. In the last video I was underwhelmed but hopeful. In this one I am overwhelmed and hyped. What changed everything and why do I still have some concerns but I'm willing to feel that it's going to work out in the end? Well, I'll go through all of that today. I'm going to be focusing on the media and influencer impressions of Monster Hunter Wilds that they just released this morning on June 13th. There was an embargo. I don't agree with this marketing tactic. I don't know why they're doing it, but apparently what they did was at the Summer Game Fest, they did a hands-on showing of Monster Hunter Wilds to a select group of media and content creators. They showed off a full hunt where they were doing a live demo, I think, in the West. In Japan, because the creators were in America, they called in people and media to watch a video of a hunt, a 19-minute video to be exact. They were only allowed to view it once, ask no questions, take no video, take no notes, and then they can talk about it. So we got a lot of impression videos, and I just want to focus on the Japanese community's notes because, one, there's just too much information out there right now. I'm a little overwhelmed in a good way. And also, I just think, there's a lot of people right now covering the coverage from the West. So why don't I just ignore all that for now and sort of give my impressions based on all of that. So in this video, I will say that it finally clicked. The trailers did not communicate it to me almost at all. But in all these previews and interviews, I think I finally understand what this game is, and perhaps more importantly, what it isn't. Anyways, without further ado, I went ahead and consolidated information from over, I think it was like 8 or 9 different influencers and media that did coverage, and I put them all together in a presentation format so that we can run through it in a very organized way. So the way I'm understanding what this game is conceptually through all the different notes and impressions and all the different interviews that we're getting is that at the center of it, it's really about being a seamless adventure, open and brave, the both beauty and brutality of nature, the wilds, jumping in, being a hunter, right? With a focus on immersion. So they knew they wanted to make this on, I say next gen, but it's current gen platforms, all the way back when they started development of this, right before the release of Iceborne. So this will be a game that's like 6 years of development when it comes out, or more. So they've been working on it for a long time. And they knew from the get-go they wanted to have this immersion and no loading. But the whole idea of like moving around as a caravan, pitching your own camps, cooking your own meals when you're outside, trading villagers for items, observing and exploiting, monster herds and their rivalries, large, dense locales, with lots of simple quality of life controls to help navigate it. So collecting items, running around, doing these things, marking your map. These are not going to be tedious things, but the fun part, where you're going around exploring, that'll be the fun. So the big one, and this is a lot bigger than I guess a lot of people were expecting, was the no loading. So when you go into the village, you're just strolling in there. When you walk out to go on a hunt or whatever, you're just walking outside. There's no boundaries. There's no difference between it. There's no loading. And that makes a huge change, both in the mentality of approaching a hunt and just the world in general, feeling vulnerable, feeling like you're out in the world, that the humans themselves are monsters. They're part of nature. They're part of the ecosystem, right? Quests, you can take them on the quest board inside the town or through your handler at a camp. But for a lot of parts, it seems they're just going to also be naturally occurring. They say there's a monster over here that you need to take care of. Just go over there and you can start the hunt. With, of course, cinematic presentation for the initial hunt, which we saw in the trailer, which I didn't know at the time, but trailer 1 was basically just taking the cinematic sequence parts of the one hunt that they demonstrated after the show, the thing that they're not showing all of us. That's trailer 1. So we're not seeing a whole lot of different parts of the game. We're only seeing the cinematics surrounding one hunt with probably the first monster we're ever going to face. So that puts a lot of it in context. And just a return to more grounded roots, a more focus on understanding the monsters and the environment, and less flashy jumping around actions. This is both from a mechanical standpoint and also probably world building as well. So sort of pulling back and looking at the different types of actions, the things that we're going to be doing in the game that really feel different from what they did in the previous ones is one, and I'll get into more details, but a rework of weapons to give them back their identity. There's a lot of talk about how different, how old school and how less flashy, less moving, how different a lot of the animations were for the weapons. I think it was the greatsword and the heavy bowgun that was shown off in the trailers. In the West, when they did a behind-the-scenes demo live, I believe they used, outside those two weapons, they swapped over to, I want to say it was a hammer and insect glaive, I think I read, but I stopped reading impressions, so I don't know. In Japan, they used dual blades and a long sword, of course. But there's a lot of comments which we'll cover on those weapons and what had changed. And the real focus here, and this is something they said in the interviews, they knew they wanted to do all the way back in Iceborne, which is dynamic weak spots, which are created naturally, whether it's through a hunter's attack, environmental gimmicks like dropping a rock on them, other monsters, mounting a monster and attacking their back. Anything that can damage a monster over time should naturally become a weak spot, a sore spot, that if you do a special attack and you hit it really hard, it's going to do a lot of damage and stagger the monster. And that's what they wanted to do. And one of the things that is interesting is, and we'll get into this as well, I'm going to keep saying that, I'm sorry, is the focus mode is really just a quality of life thing. It's not something that you'll ever have to interact with. It's just another option out there, because now that we're going to have dynamic weak spots, you're going to need to be able to angle your camera with the right analog stick. And that's something that I personally noticed that a lot of gamers in Japan, and this just could be my weird theory, but I've seen it a lot, where a lot of games here are either on rail cameras, or people just don't, when I'm watching their gameplay, they're not their cameraman, right? They're not always micro adjusting the camera like a lot of I see Western gamers do. And I think just action games in general, right? Like when you're worrying about positioning, you're worrying about, your animation commitment, the duration of the attack. It can be kind of hard to aim for specific spots on a body, especially if it's like the face or the toe. Like they're both in the sort of the same direction, but depending on how you angle your character or the camera, it can change. So they just made another mode that makes it easier for players that have difficulty. So they know that all players, regardless of their skill level, will be able to utilize the weak spots. They have turf wars that are more involved than just scripted attack sequences. This was something that a lot of people mentioned in their sort of impressions of the game being played, whether it's the video or not, was just how real it felt that monsters had beefs and they were fighting each other more than just having like a one attack and then they run off. To of course make all this seamless, easy travel, both auto and manual. When I say auto, I mean you can drop a pin and your mount will just take you there. You could be watching around looking for stuff that you might want to go off the beaten path. Or you can just control it manually and run there. So it's like taking the Palamute system and the ride system from Iceborne and mixing them together. But the Sacred can do everything, right? It can jump, it can fly, it can travel over things, it can creep up on stuff, and the whole time it seems they're really, really leaning into the Slinger, which was a great idea from World and Iceborne. So to see them really lean into the hook Slinger, that's going to let you interact with a lot of the environment. They can expand the size of the environment greatly, and you can still gather items quickly and easily, because as you're running by, you're just going to be shooting out your claw, like the claw in the Slinger, and it's just going to pick up items, and you can shoot it out at objects and do stuff like that. So they're taking a lot of the minute control out of your hands and letting you focus more on the environment and interacting with it. And that's really the whole point here, is an environment that constantly changes and reacts to itself, not just you. True hunting immersion, things that don't require your input in order to have, the stories unfolding. Monsters have migration patterns, they interact with each other. At nighttime, certain monsters will go to, let's say, a grove or go to the water in the morning, and there's routines and patterns that will get disrupted as you, the hunter, are moving monsters around and fighting, and also just sort of the more crazy events like the lightning storm, the sandstorm that we see, where, monsters get shuffled around and stuff happens, and being able to take advantage of that environment is just another step of immersion in this living, breathing world concept. So hunting locales, there's a handful in the game. The word that they're using in Japanese to explain it is very obviously not used for like 2 or 3. It's something that would be used more for 3 to 4 or 4 to 5 even. Maybe not beyond that. But they said as you progress in the game for all intents and purposes is open world. But the reason why they're using seamless and not open world is that open world, by definition, has this connotation that all the different areas that are available in the game are there available from the start. And it's up to you how you want to progress through it. So they don't have that. This is going to be more like the Guiding Lands, where you'll have this huge area. They said that the map is just massive. It's got verticality. And a lot of the examples given here in Japan were, it was like taking 2 maps of the Wildspire Waste and putting them together. It was that big. Having an area like that, as you progress through the game, will unlock a second area. Let's say it's a snowy mountain or something like that. A whole nother locale itself with its own unique environments, weather, the lush and sort of the harshness both being shown in their environment. I guess you can call it like seasons, but it's more like weather than anything, because the changes are frequent enough that you're going to get to experience and utilize them in gameplay. And it's just going to keep expanding. So like if you just look at the logo and take the hints, it probably could be 4 to 5 huge locales. That's like the depth of having, you know, like 12 to 14 maps to hunt in, if you think about it, which is crazy. And no loading or anything in between them. However, they did say, and I'll cover this in the Q&A, that if you're trying to go somewhere that's really far and you've unlocked a huge area, you know, they can do teleportation and some loading or something just so you don't have to do all that travel yourself. There is instant travel, so you'll get around there. But the fact is that it's kind of open in that regard of what we were hoping for, which is a really connected, huge universe that you can just go out and just hunt and have fun. There's also going to be a lot of camping spots, like possible camp locations. They said it'll be highlighted in like green on your map, of places where you can set up a camp. So there is a village, at least in this first locale we know there's a village, that has all the functions you would come to expect from a small settlement village. But in most cases you'll be setting up camp with your caravan. Apparently you could set up more than one. They said it's, you know, I guess as you progress, you'll unlock the ability to have more camps. But they'll have all these other locations that you can place them. They're both going to have safe locations where you know if you set up the camp, it's always going to be there, but it might be a small trek from, let's say, an area that often there's a monster you want to hunt. But there's also dangerous locations as well that you can go ahead and set up a camp. And it's really convenient, but it might get attacked and broken by a large monster or a herd or whatever. So that's kind of interesting that they're giving you that choice, but you'll be able to set them up and safe travel between all of your camps. Monsters, the herds, endemic life, everything will change dynamically depending on the world state. And will interact with each other without your intervention, which I mentioned in the last segment of this video. So yeah, I think that's like the big thing, right? These are just hunting locales, seamless, no loading even for villages. That's kind of crazy if you think about it. So the one hunting locale that we've seen so far is just the Windward Plains, which is the starting area of the game. We know that the 2 major conditions, or weather, seasons, whatever you want to call it, we've got the golden lushy zone with all the different grass and vegetation and grazing monsters, and then we have another state it can be in, which is covered in sand, very dark and gloomy and dusky, very Gears of War 1, if you know what I mean. And then we also have one major anomaly, which happens, which is a thunderstorm within the sand. So you can call it a thunder sandstorm. And inside, of course, this Windward Plains, we've got herds. We already know of 2 monsters that are herd-type monsters, endemic life, natural formations, and interesting enough, a persistent state. This is something that they mentioned in the interviews here in Japan, is that things will remain as they were in between gameplay. So if you're going out for some hunts, you progress the story, if something was happening, the example that was given was really minute and weird. It was like, you know, you see like a nestling bird, making a nest in the town. Well, as time progresses, you'll notice that the bird finishes the nest and then has babies and then feeds the babies. Then you see like the babies learn to fly and stuff like that. So I think they really want you to put on your explorer hat, brushing up your David Attenborough voice, and get out there and just enjoy the life of the living world. Pop open the binoculars, which they said is back. Hopefully they'll have a disable hub so you can just take videos and stuff, but really just observe the world. So very interesting stuff. In gameplay wise, I was really worried about Sacred because, you know, they showed a lot of shooting your guns, trying to hit monsters with your greatsword on it, and just a lot of gameplay on this monster and not much on the ground. But they were very clear in this impressions sort of media thing, is that Sacred is really for movement only. You'll run, jump, glide, get around places. It'll help you so you can sharpen your weapon, use items, your slinger, and collect stuff while you're on it. And while some weapons have some limited functionality, the purpose is really for distracting or luring monsters, not actually doing damage to them. Riding can be either manual or automatic. If you set a destination, it'll just drive itself and go there, or you can ride it yourself. It does some auto evades of some simple attacks if you are sort of running into a projectile, and it allows you to swap to your secondary weapon, which can be anything. It could be two of the same weapon type, it could be one gunner, one melee, doesn't matter. And this is not factored into the balancing of the game, it's just more options for your hunter for you to hunt however you want to. The other thing we get from these impressions is that the Slinger is really in the center of the focus of this gameplay. There's a bunch of examples that were given from people who got to watch the gameplay. Here are some of them. So there was a thorn grass shot. This was apparently put like a vine on the face of the monsters and sort of cause them damage or cause them to lose visibility and probably lose track of you. One big thing was the lure pod. This is something that you were able to shoot at the alpha monster, which we'll get into. And this will sort of help lure them towards you and away from the herd. There's even the enmity lines, like the line of like, what do you call it, like aggro lines. It's just like a little red line that shows where it's focusing its aggression. There was something called a wound shot, which you can grab using your slinger on small monsters, like animals, will allow you to get special ammo. So there was like an alligator type monster shown in the first trailer. They said if you use your slinger on that as you're just riding by, like a drive-by slinging with your claw shot, you can get the wound shot, which I think is what we might be seeing when we see in the second trailer when they shoot something at the face of one of the monsters and knocks it out of the way. But again, this is not for hunting and damaging. This is just for strategic movement, traversal, and splitting up herds. And of course the hook claw, which is going to be super convenient for just gathering up items around you, interacting with sort of environmental traps and other stuff like that, and being able to just break off rocks and drop them on monsters, flinch monsters, and do stuff like that. So this is really a quality of life change for the game, and I'm so relieved to find out that mounted combat is not really going to be a thing. So I don't quite agree with how they've been going at it from a balance standpoint and what they're showing us, but the reason why they chose to focus on the two first monsters that they did in the trailers was because of this concept of herd monsters. It's brand new. We've never had this in the series. It's something that they definitely wanted to do with these locales, and it's a way for the monsters to interact with each other in a way that we've never dealt with before and really show off the aggressive, crazy nature of the world. So they mentioned in an interview that each locale will have, I believe, two or at least two types of monsters that are considered herd monsters. These are ones where you see on the right here where the monster who is the alpha, they call it, is like the bona fide monster that you're going to hunt, your target. Probably the only one that you'll get 3 cars from, I'm assuming, but I don't know. It has a visual distinction between it and the rest of the pack. So if you notice, like the Doshaguma here has like red fur and a big red face, and we even see it in the video. It looks like they're fighting, but it's really just the alpha monster showing off that it's the leader, it eats first, it calls the shots, and that's really what's going on there. And your point is you're trying to lure it away or get the other herd off of them. And you can use traps and do stuff like that, but it's very clear. So this definition of alpha monster is not really a designation, it's just more of the status, right? Like this is an alpha this. You can fight the non-alpha monsters as well. Who knows what you're able to get or carve, but it's going to be much more in your favor to not try to do that, although I could see that being a very fun strategy, like speedruns, like how can you take down the entire herd without separating them. But yeah, you'll be using lure pods in the environment so that you can get them into a one-on-one, which is where we saw in the trailer that the hunt was officially sanctioned and started. So it seems very important. They don't want you to fight 4 or 5 large monsters all at once, because these monsters can get scary when they're in packs. The third monster we saw is actually not the flagship monster. They're very clear about this in their media previews here in Japan, but rather it's what we're calling the apex monster. Now, I don't mean this as like an actual categorization, and they don't either. They're calling it Nushi in Japanese, not to be confused with Apex from Rise or anything like that, but this is the same terminology and description that they used in Monster Hunter World to say this is the monster that stands at the top of the food chain in a given environment or ecosystem. So for this monster, they specifically said that in the storm environment, when it's stormy and there's lightning out, this is a monster who stands at the top in that type of situation, and will just wreak havoc because it has no rivals. It can use the lightning and thunder to do what it wants to do, and it does it to great effect. Someone was kind here and noted that when it zapped the Doshaguma, it did 3,861 damage. So it sounds like that's probably gonna be 15% of its life pool, which is just in line. Like if you were to run into a Diablos in the Wildspire Waste in Monster Hunter World, that was the apex of that area. It would deal 15% of the damage when it did a turf war, stuff like that. But the apex monsters what's interesting is the way that they're wording it. It kind of suggests that this is not just like the apex monster for this entire area. They're very specific about saying this specific environment inside this area. So this is my guess, but I think in the first teaser we saw Rathalos with the lush environment. I have a feeling that it's going to be something like that. Like he is going to be the apex monster around the area when it's lush and peaceful out. He can fly, the skies, they're clear, no one can take him down, and he can just hunt at will and eat and do what he wants, get to the mountains and all that stuff. But when there's a storm, even Rathalos ain't going to be messing around, because this Thor Magala is going to come and zap the living crap out of him. Remember, Rathalos is weak to thunder. And it also could mean that in the sandy version, maybe we have a brand new monster or something like a Diablos or something underground that comes up and is sort of the main threat during that situation. So this gets me thinking and gets me really excited, knowing that these monsters, which are going to have like their own theme songs, which they mentioned in the impressions that this one did, and real named monsters that if you had like 4 of them coming at you, it'd just be ridiculous. These ones are going to be more traditional Monster Hunter monsters, and they're not herd monsters like the Doshaguma. Okay, well, you can probably tell that I'm excited about this game now, because it's 22 minutes into this video and I'm just now getting into what they showed in the Japanese media preview here. But all the other previous slides is taking in all the commentary and all the stuff from this and me putting it all together, so sorry about that. So what they did was they called everybody that they wanted to call. It was just a small group of maybe like a dozen media and content creators. They had them watch a 19-minute video of an entire hunt against the Doshaguma. This is the exact same thing that they were mirroring in the West, but in the West, I believe they were using the actual build of the game and demoing it live. They did mention that it had English UI, so some of the content creators that couldn't read any English, they had no idea what some of the shots were. So shout out to the ones that did, and they made notes about, hey, this said, like a lure pod, and they were able to read and remember those names, which was super useful. They were told that this was not going to be shared public, which I highly, highly disagree with. I think this is a stupid move, because as far as I can tell, every single person who has seen this demo hunt, or this video of the hunt, is off their rocker, excited about this game. Why would they not show that to us? I know that they're going to have that in August, but to do like the first actual demo of a hunt and then just hold it for 2 months and we're just at the mercy of people's impressions and word of mouth, I don't know. I mean, it's a good way to get viral for a week or two, but I just think if they have the goods, just show it, man. But they made sure everyone knows that the game is still very much in development. I originally thought this was like, going to be like a January release, and this is going to be the real start of the marketing campaign, but really this is still early days. I kind of have a feeling that this is going to be more like a summer, maybe even fall, who knows, release next year. They really want to get this right, and heck, they just sold like how many millions of Monster Hunter World Iceborne? They need to get this right, so that's fine. We can let them cook. But anyways, that's what they showed. They said they weren't going to share it publicly, but people could share their thoughts verbally afterwards. Things were completely subject to change. They made some notes about some systems that they were like, yeah, we don't know what we're going to do yet. So I think if we could be constructive about our feedback, especially in August when they do show us a demo of the game, there will be enough time for them to take into consideration and hopefully make some changes for the better if we see something that needs to be tweaked. So let's be on our best behavior and let them know what we like and what we don't like and why. And at the end of this, I will go through a summary of a few of the interviews, which they did in text form with Japanese media like Famitsu, where they were able to ask sort of some individual questions, and while there was some overlap, there were some really interesting questions and some more interesting answers as well. So for this demo, it started out in the village. It's like a small settlement, kind of a circular area, not too big. They called it Kunafa Village. I don't know what the English name is going to be. My assumption is they're just going to phonetically write it out, maybe just as I have it here, Kunafa, maybe it's a PH, I don't know. But that's the name of sort of the establishment, the settlement, the small little village. This is, people drew pictures like from their memory, and it was like a little circular area. Like on the left was like a feline kitchen, in front was just like Gemma, who can do your armor and your weapons, and a few other NPCs. There were some palicos, I guess, to the right-hand side, and it just seemed like a really compact and dense area, and the vibe that it was giving off was that this is not an established city village. Like, the location, probably they have to pack stuff up and move when they need to, so it's not that developed. It's not like Celiana or Astera from Monster World or Iceborne. It's a little bit more ad hoc. But it had, you know, all the features that you would come to want and know, and apparently a lot of NPCs. So it's not just a few people, it's a lot of people. Their routines, they were told, are going to be different from day to night, what's going on. They're aware of the sandstorms, and they have their own hunters, and they'll warn you when you're out in the field, like, hey, watch out, the sand's coming, and stuff like that. In this village, they raise the sacrets. I'm sorry, I can't say that name still well. But the mounts, they said that there was babies of these things, and they were raising them sort of like, you know, like a chocobo farm, right? Like, this is what they do, is they raise these little guys. And the village sheep, as I'm calling it, it's kind of like the Poogie, the Mufi, is called these Dalithons. I don't know. Dalithons, these are like, they kind of look like a mix between, I don't know, a bull and an ox. Apparently these monsters are bred and used for their fur and milk, which goes into the main thing that they make in this town, which is cheese, apparently. You can trade materials that you pick up during your exploration with NPCs around the town for various items, and the one that they showed off in the demo here was cheese, which is their specialty. When you're inside the town, you have the canteen, this kind of feline kitchen that you can eat at, but it sounds like in the demo they always showed the hunter cooking outside. You don't have to be at a camp, apparently. You can do it anywhere in the open world. So I can't wait for clips of you trying to cook and then getting rammed by a herd of monsters. Like fun challenges, like cooking in the middle of a herd during the sandstorm or something like that. But apparently it's like a tripod thing that he whipped out, and it's a skillet for this one. They said they don't know if you're going to have the meat skewer still, like the rotating one. Maybe it's different for different dishes, but for this one, it was kind of like a hamburger with cheese on top. They said that the food was gorgeous looking, but it was done through CG, not pictures. Like Dragon's Dogma 2, they just ended up doing like actual pictures of real life food and said, if we're going to put in that much effort, why don't we just take a picture? It's faster, which I would have to agree with. I hope they don't go too far away from the goofy nature of some of these foods, like having a skillet with like 20 things that there's no way you're going to eat, but you have your hunter doing it. But anyways, you're able to get ingredients and cook and eat outside, and the food does give standard buff. They said it was like 50 health, 100 stamina, whatever. Standard fare. So in the hunt, when they were done showing off a little tease of the village, they went outside, and that's where a lot of people said that they gasped seeing a hunter just literally talk to NPCs and just, you know, blow like a hand whistle to call over your mount and just start roaming the world. Felt really shocking. Like, people knew it was going to happen, but they have absolutely no loading screen or no, you know, no menu, no UI, no friction in between that. Makes a huge difference. And so the hunter just set out to go on an adventure to go find this Doshaguma. They did say that mantles are back. There was a clear UI icon for it that used the same ghillie mantle from Monster Hunter World, and the hunter put on this mantle, which allowed them to sort of sneak up on the herd without getting spotted. And apparently you can do a backstab, like a literal like vicious assassination, like backstab to a monster. One of the cool things is they did mention that there's no animation lock. So when you have, you know, in like Monster Hunter World Iceborne, when you had a mantle on, when you lost it, you'd have to like this 1 or 2 second animation of your hunter taking it off. And it was cumbersome, and even you can get hit in the middle of it. For this one, it was all just quality of life, just instant, like it was gone. You just take it off during probably the motion of, you know, taking your hunter knife and stabbing the monster. But anyways, that initiated the aggro and the chase started. They did mention that they were showing there's a mini map that you can have displayed. You can even enlarge it if it's better for you, and you can make it more translucent. So they said that, you know, pulling up your map and deciding where to go next and do things is going to be a loop that you're going to do a lot in this game. So they're putting in a lot of effort there to make sure that it's, you know, more comfortable and not cumbersome to do. And then the chase inserts. They're in a pack of 4. So there's 3 Doshaguma and the 1 Alpha with the red face. And they all start running after you. So the hunter is running away. Again, not a cutscene, just something that was going on. The hunter could have just tried to stand their ground, but it probably would have been pretty tough. The hunter then picked up some ammo as they were running with the claw hook, which you can see in the trailer as well, to shoot it up and just drop a rock on the herd that was following them. Doing stuff like being able to shoot the heavy bow gun or shoot little lures or use their slinger. Lots of stuff to just try to get the attention of the alpha and try to draw away the herd. So what ended up happening in this demo hunt is they found a sand trap from a Balahara, and they sort of, you know, lured them over there. They were attacking the crowd just so they were all aggroed, and they all followed and fell into the sand pit, where I'm sure the Balahara was having a delight with the 3 that fell in. Apparently, they mentioned that like the monsters don't just instantly fall in comically, like they'll try to get out. And you can use like your slinger to shoot them in the face with like another nut or something to just sort of like push them down like with your foot to be like, get in there and get them down the hole. But with those 3 taken care of, we are then able, they announce, you know, the handler announces like she does in the trailer, you know, by order of the guild, the hunt is now commenced and you get a 1 versus 1 against this monster. In trailer 2, if you notice, it's kind of like the flip end. It's, okay, now the tables are turned, it's the other herd that has them surrounded. And then you get into a one-on-one with the Balahara. So I find that pretty interesting. And again, I don't know if that works as a trailer 1 or 2, but it certainly works when you think about it in context. One note that everyone seemed to make was about the UI. So apparently the layout is still, you know, it's so iconic at this point, you can't change it, right? Like you got the health bar, the stamina gauge, and the sharpness gauge, and the icon for mantles and stuff like that. They said that all of that's there, but it's all gotten a redesign, like an overhaul. Feels very stylish, apparently. Very modern with some animations and effects and stuff like that. No more static, you know, dry green bars and stuff like that. And they even mentioned that, you know, when they were in the Dooney area, when it was bright outside, which apparently the hunt started like that it was really hot. And they were having visual effects on the screen, like, you know, like almost like a heat stroke. Like you see like the wavy air of the dunes. Apparently that was affecting even the UI, and the UI was kind of like wavy and being affected by the heat. So I think that's a really cool thing that they should have showed off. I'm assuming the designs are not final, which is why they didn't want to do it, but like that sounds cool. It's those little small details that are going to add to the immersion, I think, and really help communicate it's really hot out. No one made any comments about the need for a cold drink or anything, so my assumption is that is gone. But yeah, sharpness, all that stuff is back, the gauges are there, and it's Monster Hunter as we know and love it. So next up in the demo hunt was just good old fighting. So they said that the hunter jumped off of the mount, the Sanskrit, and hit the monster, thus mounting it. Apparently there's no longer a transition when you go into a mount. You just sort of jump on the monster and you're able to start, you know, holding on or attacking it. They said mounting is not going to be like riding in Rise. It's going to be very much like mounting in World. However, there is more options for attacks, apparently, for both weak and heavy attacks. So you get a little bit more variation. I imagine because of the weak spot system, you can also, you know, jumping around the monster and choosing where to make the weak spot is going to be important, because the finisher from the mount for this demo hunt is what created a weak spot on the back of the monster. So they were able to show off just some, nice gameplay and just stuff like that. And then they used this moment to show off focus mode. So you don't have to use this. If you make a weak spot on the monster, you can then do, a special attack to that weak spot and then follow it up with like a special attack. I know I keep saying special, but I don't know the names of these things yet. But yeah, there's a Punisher you can do that they say that the monster will react to. It sounds like you're going to get a special down, like they're going to fall over and topple, and you'll be able to get a lot of damage in. This is something that you can do outside of focus mode, but what focus mode is kind of like just a new camera lock-on system. But it has functionality, which is why they don't want to call it a lock-on system. Basically what it does is it centers the camera 100% on the monster in front of you. So if it moves or whatever, the camera will always be locked on them. You can still strafe left and right a little bit with the weapons, although your mobility is a little bit more limited. But apparently hitting the trigger on the controller will pop up an aiming reticle, and you're able then to adjust your camera. So instead of worrying about your left and right movement as much, you can focus on the angle of your attack. So if you're trying to hit its right foot or its left foot or its face, or if you're trying to hit, let's say, like its belly, but you keep ending up hitting it in the face, if you were to lower the camera, you can then do a more precision strike and hit that specific weak spot. And then all you have to do is press R1 and boom, it's like an easy shortcut to do like that super finisher, and you can do a lot of damage. So this is just an option for people who have a hard time angling the camera as well as trying to judge distance and do all that stuff. This is just another tool in your set that you can use. They believe that people who don't need it are still going to use it from time to time because it's fun and different. And those who just find it hard to hit weak spots, they can just use this new cool little system to get over that and not be at a disadvantage. And of course, while weak spots are red and visual, even in normal hunting, once you go into like focus mode, because it's specifically to hit a weak spot, it'll glow really bright red apparently. So idiot proof. It'll be very easy to know where to hit. So I'm actually really happy about this. I thought that focus mode was going to be like the next big thing, like, okay, we're not having hunter arts, we're having focus mode, and and like, oh gosh, we're gonna have to go in and out of this is where they're gonna add all the new moves, and it turns out that's not it at all. It makes me wonder why they're calling it mode, because mode just sounds a little, I guess they want to make sure people know that it has additional functionality beyond just a camera lock. So whatever, but I'm sure this is going to be a system that's going to be appreciated by a lot of players. And I love the fact that this is not the focus of the core gameplay loop in this. This is just one way to get around what they're afraid of, which is people having a hard time with the weak spots. Okay, after they've been beating up on the monster, this is when apparently they started getting warnings from their palico or hunters around them, letting them know that a sandstorm was incoming. So the weather was starting to change. Apparently this is all marked on the map as well, and it's like dun 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 dun, big event happening, right? So sandstorm washes through, lightning flying all over, and of course, I'm sure they scripted it for this hunt specifically because they wanted to show it off. But the new mysterious thunder monster flies on in and gets into a turf war with Doshaguma. Now, they still won't name the monster, but they made it very clear that this is not like the flagship of the game. This is just the apex monster of the stormy environment of this map. But it comes down and does like it's got its four horns that are kind of fleshy, aims them, it makes like a railgun and shoots the poor Doshaguma for over 3,000 damage. A lot of people were commenting again that the turf wars of what they saw were really nice and elaborate, more than just a single attack and then running off. Like they were actually reacting to each other. At times the monster was like looking at the player and maybe starting some beef with them. But eventually the stronger monster is bored. It's so much stronger probably than the hunter and the monster, and it flies off. So they took this opportunity in the demo hunt to go back to their camp and swap into two brand new weapons. So your camps, your portable camps, your simple camps outside of the village, you'll have all the functionality that it had in World Iceborne. So you can change out your entire item sets, you can change out your armor, you can also change out what weapon you have and which weapon your mount is carrying for your secondary weapon. One note that someone gave, which I was so happy about because we haven't seen anything cute or, you know, like Monster Hunter's got like that silly cute stuff going on. They said that there was a Downy Crake motif clock at the camp that was showing the time, because time's really important, because you want to know, hey, is the nighttime coming? Is it daytime? You know, what's going on? I thought that I want to see what that is, because that sounds adorable. And they said that even like the UI menu for the area showed like each part of the map, like what was happening on with the weather, like, hey, this is going to get stormy, this is not. And apparently it's super clear in the UI, and it's going to play a big role. It's not going to be like a guessing game or completely random. You'll be able to sort of plan for this kind of stuff. And then they went back to the monster and they started doing some longsword and dual blade fighting. And I really wish they would release the footage of this hunt, because we have nothing to go on except a lot of people, and some of the impressions in Japan were just like, oh man, it was happening so fast, I had no idea what I was looking at, but it all looked really new and cool. So there's just a whole lot of nothing burgers, but thankfully they did have some content creators that were there that are very well versed in Monster Hunter and was able to give us some more information. One of the comments I saw from several people was that the longsword felt different. They said that the longsword was very samurai-like. Not a lot of excess movement. For example, apparently the finisher to the spirit combo, where it used to be like that huge roundhouse that would move your hunter while doing this, you know, big crescent slash. Probably because the whole focus on this game is making and attacking weak spots on the monster's body. That's just going to make it really hard if your monster's flying around everywhere when you're doing attacks. So apparently, like, they were standing there like Seven Samurai like, and just go whah! And just like I'm doing a motion and you can't even see it because I'm an idiot. I don't have my camera on me. So it's like an upward swipe. Someone said it was like going from the bottom to the right, almost like a really quick like draw parry, but just something very cool, quick, and very long swordy. And they said that just a lot of the motions for the long sword felt, you know, like, I guess there was a poke animation that was very samurai like and very new and different, and just felt like it had a better identity as a weapon, with what sounded like almost like a rework, but the spirit gauge and all that is still there. They did say the Helm Buster was still there, but there was a new finisher to it. So that was interesting. And for dual blades, the only comment I saw outside of it looked really cool but I had no idea what was going on was someone who noticed that there was a different version of demon mode. Well, I assume it's different, because I can't imagine they're taking off demon and not having that red aura mode where you do more damage. But they said that the dual blades was able to go into a demon mode in which they glowed blue instead of red, and it seemed to change their evades to something much more nimble, and it seemed more evasion and movement focused than perhaps the regular demon mode is. So very interesting to learn about that, but we really didn't get much information. After I make this video, I'll be interested to look at the overseas impressions and find out about my darling, the insect glaive and the hammer, and find out if there's anything interesting tidbits. But you know, the overall impression from people, from the great sword to the bowguns, apparently got a really big rework this time. I don't know the details, but they said, you know, like, just the way it works, some of the shot types and just how it handles is different by necessity, I imagine, because the game would just be too darn easy. But we know gunners, they're gonna make it the most powerful weapon anyways, so I'll be looking forward to seeing that. But yeah, it seems like a lot of the weapons, everyone said, felt like it had more of an identity than it used to. That animations were more reserved and pulled back. Someone even made a really interesting observation and said that the greatsword felt like guild style in Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. So instead of any of the new flashy styles, it felt more down to earth, more closer to what it was in the beginning, with more simple motions, really big charge ups and attacks. And that kind of comment just gets me really excited, and I'm very interested to see how that really plays out. At this point in the hunt, they decided to pop an SOS flare, which of course the game was offline when they were doing this, and it's still called 3 hunters, but these were NPC hunters. So apparently you have the option, you can do multiplayer obviously and call people, because they have such a great AI system in Sunbreak. They're utilizing that here as well, and 3 sort of generic NPC hunters came to show up to help, so you'll get to have the multiplayer experience even when you're playing alone. This is another thing I see a lot in games here in Japan lately, especially like another one of my darlings, Final Fantasy XIV. They've made it so that you can play almost all the dungeons single player, with NPCs. And it seems to be a lot of performance anxiety issues that a lot of people have. And I think that's something that they really have to consider now that the franchise is really big and not as niche, that you're going to have a lot of players that don't want to go online. Or maybe, gosh, because it's multi-platform, maybe they don't want to pay for online because they're not on PC and they charge multiplayer still in the year 2024, 25. So, you know, I like that. That's a really good idea that you're able to play and experience multiplayer hunts if you want to, without being restricted that way. That's huge news, actually, for me. I think that's great. Apparently, around this time, they used the Slinger for the that crack shot, and they broke off a part of the monster. And a comment from a few of the people was that when you break a part, you instantly get the item. Like, it just popped up on the right-hand side of the screen, like when you auto-gather, like, a potion or an herb or something like that. So that's interesting. You're able to farm monsters and just abandon the hunt if you need to. Could lead to some interesting spammy farms for some materials, but just a nice quality of life. It's because they don't have that whole like quest start, quest end system, and it's more organic that they just say, hey, you broke the part, you got the item. And then the Doshaguma ran away and apparently went to sleep. So of course, like any good monster hunter, they started placing large barrel bombs around it to wake it up in explosive succession. And so the big thing that everyone gasped about here was that, one, the design visually of the large barrel bomb is apparently different. But now, instead of just statically, you know, trying to line them up awkwardly and place it and then blowing yourself up as you try to blow them up, you can now reposition, throw, roll, and just be more nimble with these things. So they said that, you know, they rolled their large barrel bomb, they repositioned it, and then rolled it into the wall and blew everything up and woke it up. And at that point, people observed that they had sort of like that little skull icon that shows that it's near death. And they popped down a trap. So people were curious whether or not they were going to capture the monster, because there is shock traps. Even there was an environment shock trap they used somewhere in this hunt, apparently. There was like thunder bugs inside of like a rustle of grass, and when it was stormy out, you can hit them with the Slinger and it caused like a shock trap to the monster that was just behind you. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But they ended up just wailing on the monster and killing it instead. I don't know if that means that they just didn't want to capture it because that would be anticlimactic or what, but we can take from that what we will. And that was the end of the hunt. And interesting enough, people were noting that, you know, like after you defeat a monster and you go to carve it, it kind of loses all physical properties. It's just like a wireframe, and you go like almost see like the eyeballs inside the monster. My guess is that this was immersion breaking for the team and something that they wanted to get rid of. So now when you walk on the dead monster, you're actually like physically climbing up and walking on them. I'm curious whether that means that we're going to actually have, like, if you walk over to the back and you carve, is it going to net you a different chance of getting the back item versus if you were carving its foot? I don't know. But you're able to carve the monster like normal because it was the main quest monster. The quest results screen pops up on the right. You get all your rewards, and then life just moves on. So that was another jarring moment for people, like when they said they were leaving the village to go on a quest and there was no transition, no anything. This is another area, like you're out there in the wilds. If you ever want to go back, you can go back. If you want to just stay out there and hunt, you can do that. So no more 60 seconds or weird, awkward waiting to go back to the village. It's seamless. And that concluded the 19-minute demonstration of a hunt that they showed all these people. Again, I don't agree with this method. I think it's kind of cruel to us to be literally with our bowls starving, saying, please, can I have a peek? And only a select few individuals got to see what apparently was really well received. And I love all the feedbacks and comments that we're getting on it. And it's helped me understand what I was seeing in the trailers. And now I'm really excited. Whereas before it looked like they were really focusing on mounted hunting and shooting with your gun and swapping your weapons and then a focus mode. But I find out now that all that is just, you know, additional dressing and quality of life and has nothing to do with the core loop of the game. That's really exciting for me, and I wish they would just release this footage knowing that, yes, it will change, there's going to be things that change, but it was very well received. There was like no comments from any of the people except, oh my god, this looks amazing. Like, the mad lad, they did it. You know, like, they could not believe, their jaw dropped, that everything was this seamless, running this well still while the game is in development, and just looking the way it looks. It was, you know, that RE engine, man, which they did confirm it uses, does some magic. So anyways, that's the end of the hands-on impression. So I want to go into a few of the media interviews and then end with some closing thoughts. I know this is going to be like an hour-long video, but this might be the only news drop we get until August, so I wanted to cover it fully. So I spent a long time going through all these things to give you guys sort of the impressions from the Japan side. So hopefully you guys are enjoying this. I know I generally try to do more compressed, small, and concise videos, but for this one, man, I just wanted to go crazy because I've been not exactly enthusiastic about this game for the first 2 trailers, and now I'm finally getting excited, so why not let myself just go off and talk? And I don't even have to make an excuse for not having edited footage to my talking, because there's no footage. There's just the trailers. So anyways, let's get into the media Q&A and go through some more juicy details. So I don't know who did these questions first. They're probably very boilerplate and basic, but in their interview with Famitsu, some of the more notable things that I took away from it was they were mentioning that, you know, one of the reasons they wanted to make sure that the palette code spoke was that there's so much going on and there's so many things you can interact with on this huge environment that they wanted players not to miss stuff. So having the Palico who's with you and can speak canonically to you, there's just certain things you will not get if you're not told. So they're able to use their voice now to talk to you and verbally tell you and warn you about things, let you know about items maybe they spotted in the distance. So they implored everybody to at least give it a shot, because they said that the team poured their heart into it and they think it's really good. But they said that you can easily go into options and switch it back to just meowing if that's what you want. They know that that is iconic and a lot of players don't want to mess with that. But they're just asking that you keep an open mind and at least give it a shot, because they're pretty sure that people will like it. So yeah, you can't change it to meows, but if you do, that's sacrilegious in my opinion. At least the Japanese. I like the English voice too. I'm really happy that it doesn't sound like Nabiru does in stories, because I hated that voice in English. But I love the cutesy voice. Maybe other people don't, but you know, we'll see. Focus mode, again, I already covered this a lot, is optional. You can still get the special reactions, aka like downing a monster when you do a special attack on the weak spot. This is similar to a lock-on mechanic, but functions differently and really is just a quality of life for new players. But older players may enjoy it as well, because it's just a change of pace. Player talking, they mentioned a lot about this. Like, they were asking questions about, like, hey, so is a player going to have like a big role in the story? Are they going to do that? And they said, look, it's not that deep. The only thing is they want this game to be immersive, and so when they were doing cutscenes, when someone asks your hunter a question, it's really immersive breaking when your hunter doesn't respond back at all and just nods. So they said in any situation where your hunter would naturally say something like, yeah, okay, let's do this, sure, you know, they'll speak. But beyond that, that's not the point. They're not trying to make this into a character with a personality, because that's up to you. That's your hunter, and you can make them be who they are, and you will get options for voices and customization in the character creator. Hopefully they don't go with the pitch system that they did in Dragon's Dogma 2, because that was really weird. But you should have a certain degree of flexibility with your character. Interesting, there was also a lot of questions from all the different media about, hey, this looks like it's a sequel to Monster Hunter World because the Monster Hunter is the same font, or hey, this looks like we're doing a continuation of Monster Hunter 4 because we're seeing characters that look like they come from it. What's the deal? And Capcom was really clear in their messaging here. They said, this game is not directly connected to any other Monster Hunter game. It is its own setting / scenario. It's its own unique story. You do not have to have played any other Monster Hunter game to understand 100% of this game and story. So no, they didn't go as far as saying these are not characters that may have appeared in other games, but whatever story or any prerequisites to understanding anything is not going to be linked in the game. And they were very clear about that. So I'm going to consider this, this allows us to stop theory crafting about, oh my god, is this and this and this, or maybe it's the continuation from this, which is what I was doing, and setting ourselves up for something that was just different. So they said, don't worry if this is your first foray into the game. This is an original story, and you're fine. Whether or not they actually, you know, this is just a love letter and a motif, or they're actually using the same characters just in a brand new spanking adventure, we'll have to wait and see, but this was nice to get confirmation of. And finally, in this interview, they did confirm, of course, that this is using the RE engine, and the game has been in development since right before Iceborne came out, so we'll have about 6 years of development or so when the game comes out, which is a lot of time, especially when they knew that they were going to go for the, you know, PS5, Xbox Series systems and stuff like that from day one. You know, they were already on the right spot when they started it, so that's a long development time, and I'm really interested to see what they come up with. In another interview with 4Gamer, which is another gaming site here in Japan, I'll try to be a little bit faster, but some of the noteworthy things from this questionnaire was, you know, seamless was always the intention. Crossplay has to be planned from the very start of a game in order to get it done, and they planned for it from the very get-go, and they said the direct reason why crossplay was planned for was because people were asking for it. So it's just a reminder, speaking up does matter, especially, you know, I think the success of World and Iceborne and being on multiple platforms really let them know very loud and clear that crossplay was wanted. They're not going to have cross-save or cross-purchases, which is to be expected because, you know, you can buy additional stuff on the platforms, and which platform gets the share and stuff like that gets messy, but hey, crossplay is a huge win. They did also confirm, and I was really happy they asked this, which is, you know, if you have 2 weapons, do you have 2 armor sets, or how does that work? And the way they answered this was interesting. They said that they actually haven't fully fleshed it out yet. They're still working on it, but they'll talk about it sometime at a later date. But their goal is that you'll be able to have just 1 armor set, and it will work just fine for 2 completely different weapons. They said that, you know, they're going to be doing a reworking of the skill system in the game and how that works, and that is something that hopefully will allow them to do it. I don't know if that means that like weapon specific skills are going to be, you know, decorations that you put on the weapon themselves, or you have like a skill tree or something, like, hey, when I'm playing gunner, do that. I have no idea. But it was interesting to hear that they're not going to make you, or they're not thinking about having 2 different armor sets, just 1. So very interested to find out how they're going to resolve it, but it sounds like they're still trying to work it out. Focus mode, they said that, you know, you could still move left and right, like you could still strafe a little bit, but it does have new actions to help you close in distance, and of course the aiming reticle for the specific spots. I already talked about the character creation. Gauges, for example, if you have a longsword and you are on red gauge or something, or you have a charge axe and you have it halfway charged, and then you know, jump on your mount and you swap to another weapon temporarily. The question was, does the gauge persist? When I go back to that weapon, does the power I have charged up is it still there? And the answer is yes. They said it does slowly decrease over time, but as long as you don't die and get thrown back to camp, in which case, or if you change your outload like completely, like de-equip it, that it will persist, but it will go down time slowly. It will go down. They said that the hunt time that they're aiming for, and also the difficulty, the base is world. I think they specifically said world, not Iceborne, because Iceborne has master rank, and so that can be very confusing, because these games, when you start a new generation, is always low rank and high rank, never starting with master rank. So it's going to be the same as world. So they said, taking in consideration all the quality of life changes with the movement and all the different stuff you can do, hunt times should still be generally about what they were in Monster Hunter World, as well as difficulty. So they're making all these new systems with the weak spots, but they're making it in a way that it's not going to be harder. You know, I'm looking forward to a harder Monster Hunter when the eventual expansion comes out for this game. If it's a good time, it's a good time, right? So I don't think any of us will be complaining about that. And again, they doubled down again, talking about, no, this is not a sequel or continuation of a story from another game, specifically Monster Hunter 4 or Monster Hunter World. Because in Japanese they're using the same word for Forbidden Land, which was the sanctuary where Shagaru was called the Forbidden Land in Japanese, and they're using the exact same word to describe this entire like area or universe that we're going to be in. They said it in this way, it's not an actual proper noun, it's just a way to describe the area that the guild does not allow people to go into because it's dangerous. So it's a forbidden land, but that's it. They said that that was just a coincidence. So seems like a small oofy on their end for having that. And again, I already covered this, but you can't specifically hunt on the sacred. That's not how they designed it. That's not really it. The person was asking, hey, can I play songs on my hunting horn or gather essence from my insect glaive while I'm mounted? And they're like, look, battle is supposed to be done on your 2 feet. This is for movement and strategy and luring monsters. So it was an indirect way of saying, no bro, get off your mount, get good. So throughout this video, I've been giving you my impressions, and if you can't tell, I'm actually really excited. I love the confirmation of what we do have from the people who got to see the hunt, the lucky bastards. I hope that they release the footage, but it doesn't sound like they're going to, but they should, especially if they want feedback. Like before Gamescom, that would be a prime time to do it now, especially considering how well it was received. But I wanted to share, not only just my opinion, but also my daughter's opinion. She's also a hunter. She got in during Iceborne, has played, Iceborne, World, Rise, Sunbreak, Generations Ultimate, Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, Monster Hunter Stories, Monster Hunter Stories 2. She's just as much a hunter than I am, and very much, invested in the series. And so I have certain things that I have worries about, but I also have the benefit of having gone through different generations of Monster Hunter, right? So like I know certain things they're gonna nail. I just believe it because they always have. For example, the cuteness, the felines everywhere, just the general not over serious feeling is something that they had in 3. When they showed 4, it seemed really serious, but they added in tons of that. When they showed off World, it felt like it was like really realistic Western gamey, but like no, it turned out just fine with really cute, atmosphere. So that kind of stuff doesn't worry me. I have problems with their marketing and how they're doing it, but hey, I've talked about that more than enough. But I wanted to get her feedback and share it because I do agree with her on a lot of these points, and I think it might be worth calling out. Just one, because it's interesting to get other opinions and views, and also it's just if Capcom's watching this, maybe you can show some of the stuff in the future so we can calm those fears, so to say, from a hunter who is invested but a little worried. So her opinion, I asked her for this, is one, being someone who's very much into art, she's a little worried about the lack of load screens. She's someone who would actually go in and purposely load areas just to see that scrolling art, that sort of stylistic, 2D, like tribal drawings on the wall type of idea. Like that art style is so cute and iconic that losing out on that is something that she's afraid of. And that's actually a really good point. I never thought about that. Like, you take away the loading screens, where would they put that type of art, right? Because they always had really interesting loading screens. Iceborne didn't, but Iceborne was so good in how they managed like all the key people you were talking to, like the mother chef, feline, and all them. Like they covered it, but I think it's a good point that there's gonna lose a small look and feel, some of the cutesy, more deformed stuff. The less UI that we interact with, the less we're gonna get that. Which also goes into an interesting fear. I don't have it, but I thought it was interesting, was if everything is going to this new realistic sort of seamless style and a step away from UI and more on just the environment, are they going to get rid of the monster icon designs? And I'm thinking to myself, they would never do that, but it's an interesting fear. Like the icons are products here in Japan. They make magnets out of them. They make printed art and folders and notebooks with them. People, myself included, love the monster icons, and also the fan ones, like when there isn't an icon that does exist, just seeing how people envision it. But without seeing that or any of the UI or any of that type of 2D ancient tribal type of art, she's a little worried, which makes sense. For the trailers, and I agree with this, that there's just way too much bowgun being shown. Like all the characters shooting their bowgun on the not the palico or palamute, what am I saying, on your mount and stuff is just not interesting, and it felt like that was going to be a major focus. But as they said in the interviews, you don't even have to use a bowgun in this game. There's no requirement to even use 2 weapons. They said you always have that option, but like you could just never swap your weapon. That's fine. They're not making the game with that in mind. So maybe they thought bowgun Westerners great. I don't know, but you know, too much of a focus. So please like show the other weapons. Her opinion that characters aren't cute. I will say I think Gemma and Alma are cute, so I do not agree with that one. But the Palico obviously is adorable and very close to the sort of aesthetic and feel that you get in Monster Hunter Iceborne. And just the general feeling was that it might be a remnant of the engine or just design choice, but you know, it came off that all these characters kind of feel like they're modern, like they come from an FPS game or Resident Evil or something like that, where Monster Hunter generally has a few characters that have, you know, really cute, cozy designs is the best way I can think about it. You got like, you know, Catalina from Generations Ultimate. You had like the Meow Chef from World Iceborne and stuff like that. So I think she even brought up like the guild Lass, I think this was her name, from the Gathering Hall Lass from World. You know, just designs that aren't taking themselves too serious or being too realistic. This is really just a personal preference taste here, so I don't know how better to describe it, but I did have her create an image board so that I could help communicate her point on this one, because I wasn't sure how to talk about it, but that was interesting. And just this focus on humans. This was an interesting one, because I do, in retrospect, agree that, you know, the Monster Hunter team considers hunters and humans as part of the ecosystem. As you know, you have monsters, you've got humans, you're just creatures like any other. So where they like to show sort of the human drama as part of the environment, she just don't have no interest in that stuff. It's like, I don't care about the humans, I don't care about the story between them, I don't care about getting this boy back home. Like, just show me the monsters, man. Like, lay into fantasy, try not to take yourself too seriously. Like, for example, like in Iceborne, I remember both of us were kind of zoning out in those scenes where like the handler's like crying and talking to like the older lady, and it's like, I'm sorry, I don't really care. Maybe they'll break that, and maybe it'll be like a really moving game, or maybe it won't be a very heavy story, and just on nature of getting cinematics shown to us, it just feels like they're leaning really heavy into it. You know, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, but whatever. And this is a point that she made that I didn't realize it, but it's something I totally agree with, and is probably one of the reasons why I was not as sold on this. And I am confident though with the team, and I think that's where me and her differ, but towns are just as important as the monster roster is in a Monster Hunter game. One of the things that's really important for the main town or hub of a game is that aspirational element. Like, this is somewhere I want to be. I want to be a hunter in this village. I want to lay in that bed in Poke Village. I want to go in the hot springs in Yukumo. I want to pet the Mufas in Berna. I want to eat soup in Celiana. Like, all these areas are areas that you would want to be. You have a room there. You have NPCs you know and love. It's a cozy atmosphere. There's community. There's tribalness. There's something very beautiful about the villages in all the Monster Hunter games up until this point. And so her concern is that it doesn't sound like we're going to have a village in this game. We are, by definition, running around as a caravan. What we hear from the impressions of these hands-on or the videos is that the small settlement that Nada comes from, or maybe it doesn't come from there, I don't know actually, but the one that we run into doesn't feel like it's very big. We only get like, 3 seconds of it on the screen, so we don't really get an idea of it, but just looking at it, I mean, obviously it's under attack and it's gloomy out, but just the designs and everything feels very, not foreign, but it doesn't feel very cozy. Like a place that, like, I want to be a hunter here. I want to, you know, strap me in a VR set. This is where I want to go. They haven't showed us. So if they could show us a town or a settlement or something that we'll be able to go to in this game that feels very homey, somewhere where we can feel at home, somewhere to go back, you know, with the group after a big hunt and just chill. Playing FF14 also, I think this just reinforces it in my own head that having a hub place that is comfortable is super important for a social game and getting together with people. I think it would go a long way. So I hope if they have something like this that they don't wait too long to show it. But it's a fantastic point that I didn't think about, but I do agree with. And the last point here is just visually, the game doesn't, again, this is because they haven't shown off much, but it doesn't have that tribal Monster Hunter feel. Even if functionally the game is identical and it is Monster Hunter gameplay, Monster Hunter is always featured, you know, kind of like, you know, like the bonfire sort of hunter-gatherer, like prehistoric, you know, fighting dinosaur type of, you know, tribal feel is the best way that I can describe it. Where we're just not seeing that on a lot. We're not seeing like, you know, weird little monsters with like the Grimalkins or things with like designs on their face and mask and stuff like that. We're just not feeling the culture yet of this game. I'm sure the Forbidden Lands has a deep and interesting culture, but you know, when they do show it, I hope that it does capture that tribal, I called it rustic, but I think tribal might be the right word, but that homey feeling that, you know, Monster Hunter generally has. Those are really important. So anyway, I asked her to make an image board of just some random images online, just to sort of show off the good, the iffy, the mid, just show off a palette of some of the stuff of like, when you close your eyes and think of Monster Hunter, what is it that you see? And then when you see this, what are the key images you see and how does that differ? I thought this was a fun experiment and something worth exploring, so here it goes. So this is the palette image board that she quickly slapped together with me for Monster Hunter as she knows and loves it. I can see already here, and this is my own interpretation, sliced in some of the explanations that I had her give me, but you see like that tribal design on, you know, the loading screen on the Tanzia port, that sort of, you know, the calligraphy, the out at sea, the hunter-gatherer kind of, you know, very vibrant, you know, bold, happy adventure feeling. The characters look realistic, but there's fantasy elements. You got the Wyverians, you've got Gathering Hall for serious hunters wearing a bikini, for God's sake, you know, like with flowers in her hair and not taking it too serious. We've got the most adorable chef with the grandmother cat here with her stews. We've got cute little poogies, and you know, the monster icons. And here's what we have so far. Again, it's not a fair comparison because we haven't seen much at all about this game, but there are a few things here that make eyebrows get raised a little bit. Palico on the upper left, absolutely adorable. She loves it. I love it. No questions there. The new monster we've only seen for a few frames, but what we saw felt, you know, pretty cool, but a little sci-fi-ish. The monster on the bottom left, I can't pronounce its name properly, but this is going to be the new sort of like town animal that, you know, this, at least the starting village in the area, this is what they're using for fur and milk. I don't know how, as she put it, I don't know how we are supposed to love these creatures. They're kind of ugly. Like, they're not like Poogies. They're not like Fenny or Mufa. Like, do you want to pet them? Do you want, you know, are they snuggly? No, they're kind of just like dirty ox. So, you know, having a mascot character will go a long way, I think, to selling her on the visuals of this game. Again, the focus on bow guns is just not very attractive. The monsters, and I feel kind of validated in a way. I've been commenting that I don't particularly like the design of Doshaguma or the Barahara. Like, I just find them kind of grotesque and just, I don't know, like, I said sci-fi, but that's the wrong word. But it was interesting. In an interview, Fujioka-san actually said that they have, specifically, they're using a slightly different design philosophy for monsters that are herd monsters. Because a herd monster, you know, if you had a monster, it had its own, you know, theme song, it was badass and really characteristic and standing out as like an anomaly in nature. Having them running around in like a pack of 20 would be really weird. Like if you just had a pack of Rathalos, like that would just be funky, right? Or can you imagine like 5 Ishvaldas just running around like, like, that'd be funny. So they did design the herd monsters, which we see 2 of already, which are the 2 that I mentioned. They use the word natural, a little bit more natural design. I think what he's trying to say here is something that feels a little bit more in line with creatures and beasts that you would see in the real world, a little less monstery. So probably leaning into the roots of what they are. I mean, then again, the Balahada is not really natural, right? I mean, it looks something out of Aliens. But the idea is that one on their own seems totally doable, but in a pack, they can be quite scary and ferocious. Where the monsters like that Mystery Thunder one, it doesn't need to have a pack. So it can take on a more traditional Monster Hunter design. And I think that's what we really want to see. I understand that they're focusing on the 2 herd monsters. They haven't shown much of anything of the Frog Boy. At this point, I don't know. He could be nice. I don't know. We haven't seen much with him, so licking arms and making them hard is great, but I don't know if that's really a hugely defining characteristic to give him a lot of personality. I think we need to see more gameplay. But it was interesting hearing that they are designed differently, and it's just not resonating, I guess, with us, for both of us, and that's fine. All the designs certainly don't have to resonate, and I'm even more, how would I put it, less worried because the monster designs that are not hitting with me are herd monsters, and not like the traditional 1v1 monster that I'm going to go in there and face. And my comment in the previous videos has been basically, I don't know if I just want to sit in an arena with this one monster fighting it. It's just not that interesting to me. And turns out I won't have to most of the time. So I think it's fine, especially now that I know the categorization. But I'm excited to see the more monsters, and see what they look like. I personally love the design of the handler and Gemma. Sorry, Anya? I'm forgetting your name. But the design is, I will say, although the materials are not maybe modern, they do, at least looking at it now, look very modern. Like you'd run into these 2 at TGI Fridays or Starbucks. Like the designs don't necessarily, I think this is just that general lack of that sort of tribal feel. Like even with the Palico we see, it's got like, the backpack, the fur, the little cage with the scout flies, the acorn helmet, like elements of nature, right? And I think maybe we're just missing some of that on these 2 girls. I like them a lot though, but that's just one of the observations. And then again, the sneak peek of this like village, apparently this circular village, is not really appealing. It looks like this could be from Dune. Like it looks like alien to me. Like the outside, maybe the little squirrely stuff on the right hand side, the design of like the capes to protect them from the sand, while interesting, are not necessarily, it's not like I want to wear that, it's not like the other villages where it's like, yeah, give me a coat, like I want to be a resident of this town. It looks really foreign and weird. So we need to see more of it, and we need to see it in the daylight, and I'm hoping that this is not the main town or village, because if it is, I don't know if it's really going to vibe and give us that homey feeling. But that's the image boards. Hopefully that helps describe it a little bit more. So, I think it's safe to say we're both excited for this game, especially me now. I'm more hyped because I have a better understanding of the gameplay loop. But they do need to answer some of these things in their upcoming marketing. But now that we know that the game is not like a few months away, like it's probably still a year away, or a little bit less maybe, who knows. They have time to cook. So I will hold back on judgment. We'll wait to see more. But I'm loving the impressions that we're getting from the hunt that they showed off. So Capcom, release the darn video. Make a petition. Free the video. Show us the hunt. Hashtag show us the hunt. Can you imagine that? Sorry, I'm being cringy now. But yeah, I hope they show it, because it sounds like people were blown out of the water. And I want to be blown out of the water too. Not just by text and reactions from other people. Anyways, I've been rambling on. This gives you my absolutely complete thoughts on everything that they showed, at least from the Japanese hands-on impressions. Maybe there's more interesting stuff from the Western ones. I'll find out, because I'll start watching those videos and enjoying that content. So thank you to all the creators that are covering everything. Yeah, leave in the comments down below what you guys think, any things that you agree with, things that you find interesting, things that maybe you want more clarification on. Maybe I wasn't very clear in how I worded it in English. I have a tendency to do that sometimes. But yeah, let's have a fun discussion. This is constructive, and at the end of the day, hyped. I want to see more. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this long video, and until next time, happy hunting.